Hey you witches, how you doing? Welcome to another video. We are going to talk about scrying in witchcraft today, and specifically my experiences. I wanted to share my experiences around scrying because I find often you'll see sort of how-to videos, but they don't really get into what the experience can be like. So for those of you who are new around here, my name is Taya. Welcome to the channel where we talk about all things witchcraft. And for those of you who are returning viewers, maybe coming in from another video, welcome back. I appreciate the support. All of you, please consider subscribing. It's a great way to help us support the channel. So before we kind of delve into my experiences, let's talk about what is scrying. It's probably one of the oldest forms of divination because you can do it with just standing water in a puddle or a lake. But typically it's done with I find there's kind of three popular ways to do it. You can look into a cauldron of water, you can look at a black mirror, or you can, of course, always look to a crystal ball. There's tons of ways to scry, but those are sort of the three most common you're going to find when you're getting started. So, a cauldron, you just fill it with water just sort of below the edge, and you're going to sit and look in at the surface of the water. This is a black mirror. Basically, this is a picture frame. I took the back off, I took out the glass, painted the glass with black enamel paint, and then put it back in. So it looks quite shiny out here, but in the dark, you're just gonna see a dark square, just like on the surface of the water in the cauldron, you're just gonna see a dark circle. The other way you can do it is with a crystal ball. So this is my crystal ball. I'll be honest, I've never used it for scrying. Personally, I find it easier to scry into darkness. And if I have something to look at, if there's like images and things projected in it. So I find a crystal ball is kind of a hard one for me. Maybe a little bit more advanced. Sometimes they're opaque. You can find them made out of, say, I've totally lost my words here. But you can find them made out of different gemstones and such. And in which case they'd be opaque. I'd probably have a better chance with that, but I have this one from a long time ago, this beautiful little tiny one. So those are typically what you're going to use for scrying when you're getting started. And really it's done in a dark room. It's always recommended when you're starting out to do it in a dark room with just a single candle that's out of your line of vision. So if I'm scrying into this bowl, I'm going to put it, or the cauldron, I'm going to put it on the table in front of me. I'm going to put the light sort of behind it so it's not shining into my eyes. Okay, you don't want the light shining in your eyes, so you kind of want it behind. Or I will put it, if I'm scrying with this guy, I will put it behind, the candle will go behind it so that the light is diffuse, not direct. And then you're going to stare. So what will happen is you'll get a dark circle of water or a dark mirror, and you're going to stare into that darkness, and you're almost going to look through the darkness. And you do it by softening your gaze and letting your gaze unfocus. So if you ever played those games as a kid where it was all kinds of little tiny, usually little tiny dots, and then if you looked at them and softened your gaze, a 3D image would pop out. It's the same kind of concept, except for no 3D image is going to necessarily pop out at you. You're just going to look through it and let your eyes soften and unfocus into the darkness. Now, typically what you're going to see is described as a swirly or a cloud-like movement. You kind of see it just softly moving, and eventually those swirls or clouds will form into images, or you might see images in your mind. But basically what happens is when you stare with that dissociated gaze, it puts you into a trance-like state. It's not instantaneous. It takes a bit of time to sort of sit and let your mind go and let your gaze soften, and then those sort of images will come. Now, once you get the basics down, you can scry all sorts of things. You can add oils or herbs to the water, which can affect sort of the results of your scrying. You can scry fire, smoke, clouds. You can scry oil or wax by dripping them onto the surface of water and reading sort of the patterns and scrying into them on the surface of water. If you're dedicated, you can even create your own scrying bowl. So rather than using a cauldron, maybe you have a special bowl that you want to use for it. So now I've been working on scrying for my school through the Red Thread Academy, and I have to say, like, I kind of knew this stuff we've already talked about, right? That's kind of just general scrying information. I had a handle on that, but I'd never actually done it. And I found that scrying was really different than what I thought it was going to be. So I thought, what will we call it? I thought that, like, the hard work of it was going to be achieving this trance state, achieving this ability to see things, right? I'm like, I'm not a seer, so I don't know how this is going to go. In fact, I had no problem with it. I can sit down and within just a couple of minutes, I'm actually seeing things. I was like, oh wow, this is really cool. The hard part about scrying is, first of all, coming up with a good question, right? Typically you want to ask a question. You can just sit and just scry and see what the spirit sends you, but typically you're going to have a question, and coming up with a good question is sort of tricky, and interpreting the results is a whole another ballgame. So, on to questions. I find I tend to run really vague with my questions, right? Show me what my path is. Where am I going in life? Those are really, really vague. And it makes it really difficult to interpret what I'm coming up with. Actually, one of my favorite questions, and one I got the best results from, was suggested to me by Lorelei from Red Thread Academy. And she said, I have a project I'm working on, which I'm going to announce on Saturday. And she said, maybe there's a spirit that might want to work with you on your project to help make it successful. And so my question was, is there a spirit who would like to help me with the success of my endeavor? And I found I got really good results from that scrying session because I had a really good question. It was specific, but not too specific. So I don't know. For me, I just find coming up with questions. I mean, I've got a great life. I'm not worried about, can I pay the rent next month? Am I going to find a job? I mean, I'm very settled in my life. And so I find it's hard sometimes to come up with questions for scrying. So another tip would be to scry for other people. Right? A scry for a friend or a family member who maybe has questions in life. All right. When it comes to interpreting the results. All right. Rule number 1, do it right away when it's fresh. When I started doing my schoolwork, I had to do like 3 rounds of scrying with like one device and 3 rounds of scrying with another device. And so I thought, well, I'll do all 3 and then I'll sit down and interpret it. Okay, that was not a good idea. By the time I went back to interpret sort of what I'd seen, I had things written down that I didn't even remember seeing. So do it when it's fresh. Do it right away. And then the first thing is to use your own interpretation on what you're seeing. So say I see an eye. What does that mean to me? Or a key or a keyhole. What does that mean to me? Might be different than what it means in a dream dictionary, right? So the first one is to use your own intuition and really try to figure out what that means to you. I'll be honest, I'm not great at that. So then what I do is I go to, I have a number of books that I'll go to. So the first one is my Element Encyclopedia of Secret Signs and Symbols from Element. Right, from Element Publishing. Great little book. I find it doesn't have necessarily all the things you might ever see, but it's a good place to start. Now, sometimes I'll read it and I'm like, that doesn't really work for me. So it's just an option, right? You have to use your intuition as you are looking things up, because sometimes you'll look up something and it's not going to be what you thought. You're just not going to agree with what you think it should be. Sorry, just making room to put my books. The second book I use is my great big book of correspondences, Llewellyn's Complete Book of Correspondences. Often if I see something in a specific color, if I see an animal or an insect or something like that, I can interpret it through its correspondences. Another one I have, because I do often see animals, is the Animal Spirit Guides by Stephen D. Farmer. And again, if I see an animal, so I'll look it up and it'll say, if I see a jellyfish, if a jellyfish shows up, it means, and he'll have a number of different things. Now, some of them might not resonate with me. And so I don't use it. I just take what resonates, right? What makes me go, oh, yes, that could be it. The other thing I will do is I will go online. I don't have a dream interpretation book, but I will go online and just Google, again, say it was a jellyfish, dream interpretation of jellyfish or metaphysical meaning of jellyfish, like that, right? And see what comes up. And again, I find oftentimes it doesn't always necessarily mean much to me, but every once in a while I'll see one and go, that's it. That's what that means. And so using all of these different different books and different resources, I can usually figure out what something is going to mean. It just takes a little bit more digging. All right, so when it comes to what you're actually going to see, sometimes I find it's like a floaty, ethereal image, like it's almost like little clouds. It's almost like an aurora borealis. Think of it, it's almost more like an aurora borealis with just sort of moving cloudiness. And then sometimes that moving cloudiness will form into, say, an eye. Other times, it's like, bam, there's an image. And it's just like, whoo! And often when I get that, it's in color. It'll be like a something very specific. So one time I saw like a snake, and it was a black snake it was all sort of white in the background. But it wasn't like I could sit and look at it and explore all the detail. It was like, bam, there's like an image and then it was gone. That I think I more see in my mind than see with my eyes. And a couple of times I've had it happen where it's almost like a little movie. And I can see something in the distance happening. And it's kind of, yeah, again, it's almost more in my mind than it is seeing it, but my eyes are open. Any one of those is valid. Right? There's not one that's better than another. It's just different ways that things can come to you. Yeah, so sometimes it's just like a shape in the darkness, and other times it's like a very specific vision in your head. And on that note, it's not always a vision. Sometimes it's a smell, or you can feel a presence, or it's a physical sensation. When I did my scrying session this morning, I went down and I'm scrying and I'm not seeing anything. I don't even see sort of that aurora borealis kind of cloudiness. Like there's just sort of nothing. And I'm thinking, this is weird. And I'm just itchy. And then all of a sudden I went, why am I so flippin' itchy? I wasn't itchy until I came down here and started doing, oh, it's a sign. And sure enough, after I kind of stuck it out and I did end up seeing a couple of quick images and then it was done. And I was like, oh, I'm not itchy anymore. So that was a sign through that scrying. It was a sensation that came through with that scrying. It was like it felt like insects, almost like ants crawling up my legs. So not always a vision. And then I would say is play with different methods. So you can just sit down, put a black mirror in front of you, darken the room, and scry. As simple as that. It does not need to be anything more than that. But there's also lots of different methods out there that put a little bit of ritual around the scrying. Personally, I like that. It helps me get into the right headspace. So I played with a couple of different books, different methods from different books. The first one is Scrying for Beginners by Donald Tyson. This is from back in 2000. I just happen to have this on hand from like way back when. And he has a method for scrying that is basically you, with your kind of your mind, your intention, you create a sacred circle, you call in your holy guardian angel, they fill you with their light, you open your third eye, and then you scry. And then you close it all back up again when you're done. So it's quite detailed. I found it was a little more detailed than I wanted, but it was kind of an interesting way to do it. And then the other one I played with is in the Cloven Stone Workings. He actually has a method for scrying where you work with a word of power, Hustuviket, and it has an associated sigil that you put on the back of your mirror, and you put your mirror inside a physical triangle. So I use these sticks to create like an actual triangle inside which I set my scrying mirror and do it that way. So I've kind of played with that. I've had with either method, I've had good results. So I don't know that one is necessarily better than the other. I just know that personally, I like that little bit of extra ritual to it, that extra little bit of pomp, if you will. It definitely kind of makes it more of an experience. It makes me feel a little more magical, a little more witchy when I do it. So, but you don't have to do those things. And there's tons of different methods out there. Those are just two that I've played with. But yeah, so those are kind of my experiences with scrying. How about you? Are you thinking about doing it? Do you have some questions? Have you done it? Like, how did it turn out for you? Yeah, leave us a comment. I'd love to sort of know what's up with you and your scrying, because that's sort of a little bit about me and mine. So otherwise, that's the end of our video, and I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll catch you in the next one. Mwah! Thank you so much.